Honorable Madam, Union Finance Minister and Minister of Corporate Affairs, Honorable Ministers of State, and respected dignitaries. We have with us today various representatives of business associations, trade bodies, chambers of commerce, along with eminent business personalities, entrepreneurs, startup founders, and other leaders representing a cross-section of our business and finance sectors, including many women achievers. Also present are the officers of the direct and indirect tax administration of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana regions. Before we commence the interactive session, all the speakers are humbly requested to be brief in putting their questions, considering the time constraints involved. Also, a gentle request to please avoid any repetitive questions and to keep the questions restricted to the announcements made in the annual budget 2023. Madam, I now seek your permission to start the interactive session. I now invite our first speaker, Srimati Ramadevi Kannaganti, Founder and President, Association of Lady Entrepreneurs of India.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving this opportunity. First, for giving it to women entrepreneurs. We highly appreciate the initiative taken by the ministry during the budget sessions, which announced its lot of advantage to MSME sector. What we consider is the Amrit Kal for MSME sector, ma'am. In fact, I happened to be in dialogue with a lot of TVs. I said, any budget allocation is done, the impetus will be to the sector-wise. It will not be the direct effect, but indirectly the effect is there. Particularly the infrastructure you announced and food processing sector when you announced Sri Anna scheme for millet-based and also green technologies and startup programs which are announced in the budget shows the commitment of government, and we highly appreciate this, ma'am. But the other aspect which we would like to Madam and her team to be considered is with regards to NPAs happening in our MSME sector. And also there is a lot of demand in that sector because banks are also finding it difficult. Another aspect which I was thinking, our team was thinking is with regards to revival of SLIC, ma'am. There is no mechanism which addresses the SIC units. So we used to have SLIC. I happen to be there in this line since 29 years with a very good organization support. And we have taken a lot of support from Government of India. We are part of Niti Aayog and part of many ministries. MSME sector, this grievance mechanism is not there. So SLIC revival to be considered is the request. And Sri Shakti Smart Card, because we are now, even we are hosting G20, inclusive growth is one aspect which we are focusing as a government, and our Honorable Prime Minister is focusing on reaching to the last mile and reaching to the last deprived community. Women in unorganized sector are not able to access credit. So announcing as Sri Shakti as a smart card which will enable many women to participate in this economic activity, the unorganized becomes organized, they get into the banking also. I request ma'am to consider this aspect of inclusive growth for women entrepreneurs. Another I'm not just complaining, ma'am, but these are the issues which are really hurting us and which are paving roadblocks for the growth. This thing is the Delayed Payment Act, which need to be implemented. We are not able to take advantage of Parliament enactment. I request to consider this. And now in the process of digitalization, we are now converted because we are a non-profit organization under Section 8. There is a lot of PFMS issues which we are facing, which is delaying the whatever government is providing. There are various schemes and there's so much integrated mechanism which is happening with all the ministries, but the system of PFMS is not streamlined. I request that we streamlined and so that we get into it with a growth path. And simplification of credit mechanism is also one thing which is, there's a cumbersome procedures, and even the application is also, they are not mentioning about the commitment which a banker is giving. So we'd like bankers to consider, have a system which is simplified. Startups are encouraged, ma'am. We are also part of Niti Aayog under Atul Incubation Mission, Startup India Seed Fund, and METI and other startups. There's a wonderful impact. The country is moving forward into innovation. But the grants which are given by the government under Section 194B of Income Tax Act stipulates that any winnings above 10,000 are subject to 30% TDS. So this is one announcement made by the government under startup promotion is to encourage, to encourage innovation. It is not in line when we deduct 30% under TDS. Please do consider startups because that's the area where we
what
have
is that? 30% of what?
TDS. The government
what is TDS, ma'am?
Government, when they announce programs for startups, they get under challenge, startup challenge, they win some kind of prize money. That prize money is again 30% goes towards TDS.
TDS, right, ma'am?
Yes.
It's not a new tax on them?
It's not a new
they
tax.
They can always reconcile it with the taxation that they pay anyway?
Yeah.
It's not an additional tax.
It's not additional, ma'am, but we are supposed to give it to the startup, but deducting TDS, we are paying it. Startup doesn't have any mechanism.
I understand that, but somebody has to pay, ma'am. Sorry. And you're not paying as an additional tax. You're going to reconcile to your tax which has got to be paid otherwise. It's not an additional tax.
It's an incentive for their challenge.
You give 30 to extra to the startup if you're so benevolent, ma'am, but I'm sorry to say.
It's you are, the government is giving.
30% tax is not an additional tax. It's a TDS. I wish you appreciate that.
Yes, please do encourage the startups, particularly women entrepreneurs in agri sector. The budget is also paving that way for agri entrepreneurs. We highly, we appreciate this initiative of government because rural entrepreneurship is taking forward with the technology and everything. We are moving forward. We thank all the initiatives taken in the budget. Only cluster approach is towards the state government, ma'am. So there is some kind of lacuna in this implementation of this project because states needs to work with the central government and we are finding it little difficult. Just a few suggestions, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, before you, of course, you're welcome to take your seat, but I would request, and through my comments to someone who's been in the field of the MSME for a long time here in this region, I would appeal to all of you. When you're talking about tax, particularly when you're talking about TDS, you're all in the field for a very long time. I appeal to all of you all to explain the motive as to why we have a TDS and TCS objectives. They are not new tax. And people like you, ma'am, who are so experienced in the ground and working together with organizations, where this government is doing absolutely a lot of exercise, maybe many more is required to promote industry. We are also wanting to formalize the economy. Transactions happen, we don't know where the money goes. With the TDS, what we try to send as a message is at least we'll know who's the giver, who's the taker. And both giver and taker, wherever necessary, you're going to pay the tax. And at that time, you're going to reconcile this. So people who have an area of influence, like yourself, Mrs. Ramadevi, I would request you to speak for methods and measures which are being taken up by the government to formalize the economy. And if you start appealing saying, TDS, ma'am, this country will never get formalized, ma'am.
Kind reminder to all. In view of the time constraint, please be precise and concise.
1 minute. There are some things on which FS would like to explain things.
Firstly, you made the point about delayed payments and the enforcement under the MSME Act. Of course, that's a matter under the Ministry for Micro and Small and Medium Industries. But there's one significant announcement which was made in this budget, which I'm not sure whether you have noticed because you didn't mention it. An amendment is being brought to the Income Tax Act by which if payment is not made within the due time to an MSME, then that amount cannot be deducted by the paying organization until payment is already made. So this is a strong incentive for bigger companies to pay on time, because if they don't pay on time, this expense will be disallowed until such time as it is paid. So perhaps it was not noticed, so I'm just bringing that up, number one. Number two, you have mentioned issues with the PFMS. So I'll be grateful if you can give me specific instances, if you can give it to the organizers, they will get it to me. Specific instances of where you feel your payments are being delayed through the PFMS. I presume you're referring to central government payments. Central government payments. So can you give me specific examples of where you are feeling this problem? If you can kindly give it, we'll take note of it.
We move forward. Just a kind reminder, kindly be precise and concise in view of the time constraints. The many are patiently waiting for their turn. We'll move on to our next speaker, ma'am. Shri Suresh Kumar Singhal, Vice President, Federation of Telangana Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and Managing Director, Vijay Iron Foundry, is our next speaker.
Madam, under the ease of doing business, following to be considered: GST on the scrap procured by the manufacturer should be brought under reverse charge mechanism. Amnesty for one-time settling interest and penalties for year 17-18 and 18-19 arising out of technical glitches and procedural lapse to be provided. Madam, thank you.
Do you have something to say?
This is under GST, the amnesty scheme that you are wanting?
One-time technical glitches between 17, 18 and 19.
Well, these are primarily, not budget related, but both these issues, because GST, you are aware, now there is the council. So this demand is there, with us on scrap to have, but then there is not only steel scrap. Please keep that in mind. While the request is with us, there is other scrap also. They are also not in reverse charge. So we have to look at, the other scrap other than steel scrap. So we have noted your requests and we will put it up, before the GST Council.
But have you, please have your memorandum or any note that you have prepared passed on to the organizers on this matter of the technical glitches you said in the GST, asking for an amnesty. Do send the request.
We'll send.
Our next question is from Ms. Shubhra Maheshwari, Chairperson, FICCI Ladies Organization and Director, Blue Stones Group.
Good afternoon, Madam. Thank you so much for your time. Madam, a small question. Companies are taxed at 25%, whereas partnerships and LLPs are effectively charged at 34%. Can this be helped? And individuals with income above 2 crores are effectively charged at 39%, wherein when we compare to companies, it's just 25. So can something be done about this? And the limit of 10 crore, which is on long-term capital gains, can that be increased? Because earlier it was unlimited and now it is 10 crores.
Sanjay?
Well, there is actually, please, try to appreciate that when we tax companies, vis-a-vis, when we tax individuals or associations of persons or trusts, there is a significant difference. Because companies, they get taxed twice. Persons do not get taxed twice. So, wanting a parity between persons, individuals on one hand, or trusts on one hand, and companies on the other hand is not fair. And this is not only true for India, this is true, all across you will find the word that companies always are taxed at lower rates, persons are taxed at higher rates, and along with person, association of persons, trusts, because they don't suffer double taxation, they are taxed, at a higher rate. Your second, and we have already reduced it, please keep in mind. Of course, you mentioned it, we reduced it, this time for the highest, the marginal rate has been reduced from about 43% to 39% in the budget. The 10 crore limit that you are saying for capital gains, see, this is basically a measure to promote. Again, there was a request, I'm tempted, I did not comment earlier, this request came in, not to have a TDS on winnings. We want, for taxation purposes, see, from taxation purposes, income is income. But we want, exemptions or promotions or promotional measures or incentives, whether, it is for savings, whether it is for insurance, for provident fund. Now you are saying, for housing. So this is basically a promotional measure for housing which has been introduced. So one thing, I would like all of you to kindly deliberate upon is that whether giving incentives in an indirect way, because income, as I said, is income, and so, we would like that it should be taxed, irrespective of, the expenditures that you are doing on various things. So, similarly, this has been an exemption which is given for basically housing sector for the lower classes. Now, 10 crore is already, a very, very large limit. This is an exemption, please keep in mind, to promote. And so, I think 10 crore itself is also, quite a high amount. Thank you.
I now invite...
Just to supplement on the company versus partnership point, because this keeps coming again and again. You mentioned the tax rate on a partnership. After that, that income is not again taxed in the hands of the partner. But the dividend distributed by a company is again taxed in the hands of a shareholder. So actually, from a tax point of view, people would be more advantageous in a partnership even now, even with the so-called differential that you are citing. So it's not actually a valid comparison.
I now invite Shri Ravi Kumar Narra, National President, Dalit Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to present his query.
Thank you, Madam, for your support for financial inclusion. In this budget, Saptarishi, the first priority was given to the financial inclusion. And we also thank you for extending the Stand Up India program up to 2025. And we're also thankful to you for taking a review on the quantum of amount funded for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe entrepreneurs. And after your review, Madam, there was a lot of movement among the bankers. But my request is that at higher level, there is a sensitization is taken place. But at lower level, because ultimately the decision maker is the branch manager. So the country has got more than 137,000 branches. So these branch managers has to be sensitized on the implementation of the program, and that will have a more good positive results. And also, when the scheme was introduced in 2016 by your government, Madam, the takeoff has taken some time, but now that it is speeded very rapidly, it is the response is coming from these two communities. And at the time, the banking charges were very less. But now, over a period of time, the banking charges are increasing drastically, and it has become a very expensive financial assistance scheme being extended to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe entrepreneurs. Example, the following charges are levied by one of the largest bank. The interest rate is high as 11.80%, Madam, whereas at the time of introduction, it was 10.25. But now, over a period of time, because of the increase in bank charges and all, so it has increased to 11.8. And the processing fees was not there earlier. Now they are charging 0.4% plus GST. And also upfront fees of 1.40% plus GST also now being charged. And in addition to that, at the time of introduction, there was no inspection charges to be collected by the banker. But whereas now, randomly the 15,000 rupees per annum is being charged. So these things we request is to roll back to the 2016 rules and regulations of sanctioning the funding. So that will go a long way. And
Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah. So this program, now the bankers are trying to do very minimum amount, madam. Though it is the amount is targeted as 1 CR is the maximum. So for the purpose of giving the loan, they are downsizing the project cost, and they wanted to do it in 17 lakhs, 18 lakhs. Even now the average funding, if you take this thing, it is only 17 lakh rupees for average funding. Last time in your review meeting, you also mentioned about the quantum of the amount which is being supported for SC/STs, but still that this thing is there, madam. And also the bankers have got the stigma of collateral security, madam. So that they without collateral, I don't know, the mind block what they have in the bankers. Even if the government is giving so many collaterals, CGSSI is there, CGTMS is there, but the banker never feel that as a guarantee. So for that, the mind block has to be removed from the bankers. So that is every entrepreneur is facing, not only the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe entrepreneurs, all MSME sector is facing. Even in CGTMSC also, madam, though you have increased the amount, that we are very thankful for that, but at the same time, we should also fix a target to give SC/ST communities under CGTMSC also, because this limit is up to 2 crores. But when we go and approach the banker says, you have got only Stand Up India, and the Stand Up India is up to 1 crore only. So some percentage of allotment under CGTMSC also must be focused on funding the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe entrepreneurs. Thank you very much, madam, for the support. And in the Indian history, in the 75 years of Indian independent history, the Stand Up India is the greatest initiative, financial inclusion program for the SC/ST communities. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. You know, on the CGTMS, I need to have a review of actually if there's been a inadvertent exclusion of SC and ST. Because most often when I review it, the allocations for different or dispersal for different categories are normally reviewed. But if you feel that SC and STs have not really benefited from the CGTMSC, I need to review it. I will review, but I also want Secretary, Department of Financial Services to address some of the issues that you've raised.
Some of the issues raised by Ravi Kumar ji. Some of the issues raised by Ravi Kumar ji relates to interest rate and processing fees rate, etc. Actually, these are decided by the bank boards, and certainly, since he has pointed out, we will speak with them and see what can be done. With regard to, ma'am, you mentioned about this